Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I thought I would do something a little bit different for today's video. I figured we would have a good time doing a bit of an artist study, and the artist that I've chosen for today's video is Franz Roubaud. So basically what I want to do is, this will just be a very quick video where we take a look at some of the paintings that he did throughout his life, and also try and analyze some of his sketches as well, because personally, I believe that if you want to learn more about an artist's thoughts and processes when producing an artwork, you really want to take a look at some of their sketches. It's very easy to be distracted by their paintings because, the paintings are so beautiful, but the painting is the finished product, right? What you really want to be looking at whenever you're studying at any artist is you really want to be looking at their sketching, and their quick little drawings, just to kind of get more of an idea of how they went about building a composition. So I decided to use Franz Roubaud in today's video because I thought he's just a brilliant example of somebody who really knows how to use light and color effectively in his paintings, and his compositions are just incredibly beautiful to look at as well. I think one thing that he's very good at doing is drawing figures and animals as well, like especially those horses that he's drawing that you see in his paintings. He really captures that animation. I mean, those horses, when you look at his paintings, they really feel like you can get a sense of the movement, like the way he paints the movement of the legs, and where their heads are turning, and what the riders are doing. And he just has this brilliant way of depicting motion, and it's a very difficult thing. I mean, in order to get good at that, you have to draw very gesturally. You have to, get a real feel for it. It's very difficult to describe, but there's a certain, I think, kinetic energy involved, especially in some of his sketches. When you see them, you'll see them in a moment. But yeah, one thing he was very, very good at was capturing that sense of movement, which I think is absolutely necessary if you're going to be doing a genre painting such as this. So before we move on to looking at his sketches, I'll quickly share with you all some of his history. So Roubaud was a 19th century Russian painter of French origin. So his parents were French, and he was born in Odessa, which actually at that time was part of the Russian Empire. It wasn't part of Ukraine during that time. So if there are any of you who are confused as to why he's a Russian painter and not Ukrainian, well, that's the reason why. It was actually part of the Russian Empire during that time period. So eventually, Roubaud moves to Germany, and he studies at the Munich Academy of Fine Arts. And then after that, he then settles in St. Petersburg, and he actually studies at the Imperial Academy of St. Petersburg, which is still active today. And he also taught there as well. And this is kind of where he started working on like large panoramic paintings and genre paintings. And he was most famous for his historical military paintings as well. He would paint, the Siege of Sevastopol and the Battle of Borodino, and just various other military conquests. It was a genre that he just excelled at, as you can see in these paintings that you're looking at. He just really knew how to compose such a complex scene. And so this is why I wanted to share this artist with you, because hopefully we can gain a little bit more insight into how he tackles such a complex scene such as this. And hopefully you'll all be feeling a bit more inspired after today's video. Okay, so this is the first sketch of his that I really wanted to share with you, and I just love how beautiful the line quality is in this. It's drawn very loosely, like there's a lot of curved lines, there's a lot of smooth forms in there, and just some very basic hatching strokes, done quite lightly. If you have a look at the road, All of the hatching strokes are done incredibly lightly. There's also a little bit of rendering going on in this one, you know, like he's drawn in the shadows of the horse and shaded in some of the shadows on the figure, but not too detailed. It's not too overpowering. Basically what he's doing is he's just kind of estimating the direction of shadows, and then he's just filling it in and just kind of working with what he's got. That's about it. He's not really thinking too hard about the direction of shadows. He's just kind of going for it. And you'll notice there's not much shadows on the figures themselves. Like the horse is mostly in light, and so is the figure. And that's kind of a common lighting scenario that you're going to see in some of his sketches. So in this next example, he's actually done, looks like the same character, but just drawn twice in different poses. And that's something that you should probably start practicing if you want to get even better at sketching, especially when it comes to character designs and things like that. You're definitely going to want to draw them multiple times just so that you can familiarize yourself with the subject, but also so that you can explore different poses and different possibilities. This one has a bit more shadowing going on in it. You can see there's way more hatching strokes on this guy. There's a few different values in there too. So I think he's thinking a bit harder about the rendering, maybe the lighting scenario. He's probably thinking about what kind of time of day he's working with. But even then, the rendering is still done fairly simply. It's just simple hatching strokes. It's not like he's spending hours and hours rendering one spot. He's just placing lines and just kind of, I guess, thinking about the direction of light and shadow rather than rendering it in a photorealistic way. But again, very cool sketch. You can see that the face of this character has been drawn quite basically. Same with the hands, you know, like the hands look nice. They've been drawn very nicely, but there's not much in the way of anatomy here. If you go a little lower, you can see that he's sketched in the boots in the foreground, because obviously that is closer to the viewer. But the boot in the background has kind of been left unrendered. In the drawing to the side, it's kind of been left unfinished. So this is the thing about sketching. You don't have to finish them. You just have to just draw enough information until you've kind of got the idea and you just know what you're working with. You don't have to spend days just rendering a single sketch. Just capture the idea. Once you've got it figured out, just move on. Not everything has to be finished. Okay, so this one is beautiful. This one's just, I love the shadowing on this one. I think you can tell that there's been a lot of time put into this one. I'm not sure how much time he spent on this, you know. The only way I would know that is if I was there to witness him draw it. But I think it's safe to say he put quite a few hours into this one. Just looking at the rendering alone, you can see he's thinking about that strong light on the horse. That's what's capturing my eye. So he's really focusing on that area, building up the contrast between the shadow and the light. And if you have a look at the front of the horse, there's a lot of that reflected light, that ambient light that's bouncing up from the ground into the horse. And if you go back earlier to this video and look through some of his paintings, you'll realize how much he likes to do that. He was very, very good at doing that. If you have a look at the rider, again, there's not that many shadow shapes on him. If you have a look at the dark values on the rider, they're very, very small. They're just very small shapes. He's just kind of picking out the darkest parts of the figure, and then basically everything else is in light. Again, it's a very good lighting scenario because it's just great at describing the forms. It means you can focus more on line quality and more on proportions. Rather than trying to calculate where all the shadows are going to fall, you can just use that little visual trick where you're just, you know, looking for the deepest, darkest shadows in between forms, and in the rest you can kind of just do a little bit of soft rendering, if even that. My favorite part about the sketch actually is that how he's sketched the environment around the figure. You know, if you're ever working on your own character designs, you might want to consider painting a little bit of the environment. You can see that this rider looks like he's in like a sort of rocky, deserty sort of environment, like a very dry, arid environment, I'm imagining. And, you know, so the artist, he's just placed some rocks around, some stones, hints of some ground texture here and there. And again, it's all done with shadow shapes, with a little bit of light hatching strokes as well. It looks like he's put some time into the ground surface as well, because it's rendered very, very well. But yeah, again, just having that, just environmental clues can really help ground some of your characters when you're working on your own designs. So that might be something you consider doing. Okay, and just one more sketch for you all. So this was like a portrait of, looks like one of those riders. And there's a huge focus on his face, capturing some of the textures and the anatomy on this guy's face, as well as his facial hair. And on his hands too. They've been quite delicately rendered. So, you know, the artist is kind of focusing on what's important here. You know, he's focusing on really creating some soft tones on that face, just to kind of make it a little more lifelike, and on the hands as well. And then on the clothing, you know, if you have a look at the sleeves on the arm, there's not much in the way of detail there. There's just a few indications of fabric folds, some drapery folds, but nothing's been overly rendered. He's really kind of simplified that. Looks like he's wearing some kind of coat that's hanging over his shoulders there. And I like what the artist has done with that, actually. It just looks like he's just created some contrast in this portrait by drawing that on there and getting some shadow shapes in there to draw your eye towards the head area. I also love how he's just kind of rendered the background around the figure slightly. You know, it's slightly darker around the head area. And I think what he's doing there is he's just trying to create a little more contrast around the face so that your eye is more drawn to it. And then lower down the figure, it just kind of fades away. The figure just kind of vanishes towards the bottom, because obviously the artist did not prioritize drawing that part. And so, you know, when you're sketching, it's really important that you prioritize certain things. So before you embark on the sketch, I think you need to ask yourself, okay, what's my priority? What am I trying to gain from this sketch? What am I trying to convey? You know, and a lot of that comes from prioritizing certain parts of the image over others. Obviously, the artist was drawn to this character's facial features and, you know, the clothing that he was wearing. He wasn't too concerned with what was going on down below, so he just kind of left it undrawn. And it's just a much more productive way of creating art. So, you know, when I was a bit younger, the mistake that I would make was that all of my drawings had to be finished. I just had to finish them. Everything had to be rendered. Everything had to be detailed. And, you know, as a result of that, there was just like no real hierarchy in my drawing. There was like nothing was being prioritized. The composition would fall apart. And worst of all, I would just completely burn out, because it's a lot of work to try and finish a drawing to an extreme level of detail. It's really not a smart thing to do, especially when really all you're doing is sketching and just building up a portfolio. So these kinds of sketches, you know, the ones where he leaves unfinished, the ones where he, you know, bit of detail here and the rest of it is, you know, not important. It's a much more productive way of working, because you can draw more, and you can do several sketches like this in a day. This one probably looks like it took maybe an hour or two. I mean, it definitely looks quite detailed still, but it doesn't look like it took him all day, you know. He probably, you know, you can tell where he's kind of towards the bottom of the figure, he's just left things blank and he's not focused too much on the rendering. He's just indicated a few marks here and there and called it a day. And I'm glad he did that, because I think the artwork just looks so much better for it. Not everything has to be finished. And, you know, when you're doing character designs and studies and things like that, I think it's very, very important that you work efficiently and productively so that you can avoid burnout. So there's just a small selection of Roubaud's sketches. You can see how efficiently he's working in his sketches there. You know, he's just selecting things that are important and kind of just disregarding things that are not as important. And as you can see in this painting on the screen, he's just kind of saving all of his energy for his more finished work, you know, his great big paintings, his panoramic paintings and things like that. Like, that's where he's putting all of his energy into. I think when it comes to sketching, I myself have learned that sketching just should feel like a natural thing. It should just feel like breathing, you know? It should always be fun, and it should always feel free, and, you know, it shouldn't really feel like a slog. I think a finished painting definitely will feel like a bit of a slog because of the amount of work that there is to be done. But when you've built up a collection of sketches to refer to, then it makes painting the final image a lot more bearable. So next time you work on a sketch, whatever it may be, try and ask yourself, what exactly is the objective of this sketch? What is it? Like, what is it that I'm trying to do here? Is it an armor study? Is it a clothing study? Is it an anatomical study? Are you drawing animals? Are you learning to draw people or portraits? Try to pinpoint exactly what the focus is. What is the objective? And then once you know what the objective is, just kind of disregard everything else. Just everything else can be sketched in very basically in order to support the objective. That's what it should be. So anyway, I hope this was a little bit more insightful to you. There's a few other artists that I would like to share with you too, so stay tuned for that one. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.